My king, I couldn't do it. Excalibur cannot be lost. Other men...
Do as I command. One day, a king will come, and the sword will rise again.
All right. I have been meditating on all the recent news of the expected, at some point, transition of the Miami Dolphins and tying it all together with what we've had, where it looks like we're heading as far as ownership, and taking Richie Incognito's recent interview, what appears to be a pre-planned tank for this season. And I've mentioned it for a while, and I see a lot of talk about it over the last day or two. I mentioned after my last podcast explicitly on Sunday, and I think it is pretty clear. And then Stephen Ross with what looks like his move to transition the team within his family and kind of laying out there is both peril and promise. And I mean that on both sides. And I'm going to go over a lot of stuff, and it's not, I really try to tie all this stuff together to make a point. I'm going to cover Daniel Silman. I got an interview of him. Going to cover him. Got lots of clips, lots of information to kind of lay this thing out. Because ultimately, at the end, I'm going to say something that in my 4 or 5 years of doing this thing, since 21, I've never said before. It's a take that I've derided a lot of people about. But I'm going to say something I've never said and embrace it. And all this will lead up to that. And we'll highlight this promise and peril. And the great news is we'll probably get a lot of good keys very soon, very early, that will be strong tells to where we're heading. And so I'm going to take all that together and I'm going to add it to the parable, the story. I'm going to make it a parable in a sense, or a connection between the tale of King Arthur.
You have broken what could not be broken. Hope is broken.
And there's a reason for that. Parables, timeless truths, they always apply, not in the exactitude. I mean, we're not talking about magic swords and kings and stuff, but there is core stuff that if you go back to me in 2021, that I use this parable. And we're here again, and that same story and the parable behind that is going to apply here. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I ask you, give me as much time as you can, because I'm going to really try to dial this in one step at a time.
What is the secret of the Grail? Who does it serve?
I've stood by a series of theses and predictions in the rain, in the sunshine, since 2021.
Have you found the secret that I have lost?
Yes. You and the land are one.
Ultimately, they've proven out, for the most part, to be true. Little things we could debate on, but the main tenor of my theses have played out. So I'm going to go through it piece by piece, and that's what I'm going to do.
I've lost, for all time, the ancient sword of my fathers, whose power was meant to unite all men, not to serve the vanity of a single man.
So anyway, let's dig into it here. King Arthur parable is about a father who wasn't a good king, but he had a powerful sword. And he didn't know how to look into the hearts of others, least of all his own. And his son Arthur, he did. And he failed a couple of times, But ultimately, he was a man with wisdom and intelligence, and he knew how to wield the sword. And upon his death, or as he was laid dying, beating his mortal enemy, his own son, Mordred, he asked Percival, the guy who finds the Grail, the Holy Grail, that brought him out of the worst time he'd ever been in, and he asked him to throw the sword into the sea. And Percival goes, in the movie at least, goes to throw it away, and he sees the power. And he just can't do it. And he comes back, and Arthur's dying, and he says, Arthur says, so what happened? He's like, nothing happened. And Arthur catches him in a lie, and Percival knows it, and he says, I couldn't do it, my lord, the sword, it's too powerful. And he said, you've got to get rid of that power, own yourself, because there'll become a time when another king will come and take that sword. And that's really where we're at when you really think about it. Ross is handing this thing off. His protocols, the way he's built this team up, in some ways have been magnificent. What he's done as far as investing in the team, building the facility up, the stadium, and all the surrounding stuff has been extraordinary. But the exact opposite is how he's run this team. And I'm going to get into Ross, his two major keys that we can be clear are major tenets of what he believes as a Dolphins owner. And he's going to pass that off to the next ownership. And how they handle those two things is going to be critical.
King, I couldn't do it. Excalibur cannot be lost. Other men.
Do as I command.
You had Ken Griffin offered to buy the team twice for $10 billion. And that's an insane amount of money. But Ross turned it down. And so money is not a factor to him. He's not getting rid of this team. This team makes so much money with F1 and everything else, and he does love the team. He might not handle it right, and I don't think it's because he thinks he's not handling it right. So this team will be a legacy, a generational ownership of the Ross family. He's going to hand it off to his daughter, Jennifer. His other daughter, Kim, is married to Daniel Silman, who I'll be getting into in a minute. Silman's going to take over a lot of the operations, I guess, for Ross when he leaves. And so we got to understand that. That's the way it is. And so within that, unraveling it, the characters, the people, and the process and the problems of the past is going to tell us whether we're screwed or not. And there is promise. I've dug into Silman. I've spent a lot of time investing in the psychology of the people who run this team. You say, who are you? You're an idiot. You're a schmuck. Okay, but why am I so accurate? So I'm not saying I got the answers, but I'm going to present these things to you. So it's clear. Ross family will own it.
You are my lord and king. You're Arthur.
Garfunkel. Don't like him. I don't like him, not in the sense that he might be a nice guy, but he's doing what he thinks best. He made loads of money for Ross with the F1, and it's because of that he's able to keep this team despite them sucking, and he doesn't have to sell it to Griffin for the billions. And so there has been extreme loyalty there. But the problem is Garfunkel, the upper echelon, because of the way Ross has set things up, has permeated down to the most important football side, the GM. And it has been major problems. And Richie Incognito said this.
I love playing there. I love Mr. Ross. He was very, very good to us. But what I see is Mr. Ross as an absentee owner. He's busy building billion-dollar companies and developing, right? And if you look at Miami Dolphins issues the last, call it 10, 15 years, it's him trusting the wrong guys. Him trusting basically to come over and hand the keys to the organization and let them run the show without any oversight, without any pressure. And now we're in a situation where we have Chris Greer, and he's bringing in guys that don't fit the mold. These guys aren't tough. They're not physical. Then you have that as a leader, as a head coach, And this is what you get.
So he talked about Ross being an absentee owner. There's guys at the top that have influence. He's trusted in people that he shouldn't have on the football side. On the business side, that's how they got his trust. They were hugely successful. But Ross has a blind spot. He thinks because they're brilliant in business and he's brilliant in business, that equates to football. And it doesn't. I've been saying these things about the heart of the game. If I took, a great football coach and I threw him into corporate business, would they necessarily apply the same things that made him a great head coach or would make as a great? No, they wouldn't. Totally different. You could have, your best middle linebacker, and does that mean he's going to be a great corporate guy? There are skill sets, there are rules, there are tenets to every individual job. And so on a corporate side, Ross has had so much success, and what he does works very well in that. But he's got guys that run the show. He set up the framework for a corporate structure. He's even said it. I set up a corporate structure, divisions of power. And it does not work in football.
You and the land are one. Drink.
I'm wasting away. I cannot die. I cannot live.
Drink from the chalice and you will be reborn in the land with you.
Football is not like corporate world. It's a pseudo-militaristic sport with violence and pain and different types of leadership. There's certain things that cross over in the corporate world and on the football field, but there are certain things that don't. Guys like McDaniel, a little slight guy, you might say, that's not nice, that's not fair. Well, maybe if he was a hard ass, and maybe if his demeanor was different, it could sort of work. But you're asking men to go into battle. No, it's not like the Vikings and the clashing with the Knights or the military battlefield. But you need certain types of people, certain types of nature. You need levels of honor and trust and strictness. That doesn't work, at McDonald's or as a white-collar guy or, a truck driver. It's not the same. And we have not understood this. Ross has thought that the guys he thinks or are successful in business, that nature, will, if you keep jamming it, the round peg in a square hole, it's going to work, but that's not how it works. It's violent. You have people that are doing things that you get arrested for. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but it is so different. You can't have weak guys like Greer. Can't have weak guys like McDaniel. You need strength, honor, and you need someone who is not having divisions of power, someone who's in total control, who is half erudite to work with the upper echelon corporate guys and half barbarian to deal with the people below him.
I didn't know how empty was my soul until it was filled.
And we don't have that. So someone said to me, well, you say Ross meddles too much. Well, Richie said he was absentee. There's a difference between being divorced, which having no interaction, and being absentee. You could still interfere if there's absentee dads. They're around sometimes and sometimes they're not. Ross in 2019 said, I've got to get out of football operations. I'm totally out, which means he was in.
My pride broke it. I am nothing.
He came in when Gase was here and wanted him so bad. He came in and stepped between Tannenbaum and Greer and said, I'm going to give you extra control over the roster. He was looking for Brady. Someone put two in.
I've lived through others far
Guinevere my guilt. Mordred bore my sins. My knights have fought my causes.
Guys at the top, the suits, are coming into the football operations here and there, including Ross, and it doesn't work. This is why we suck. There's no other successful team in the league that operates like that. He's been an absentee owner, hands it off to his upper echelon, and occasionally has come in and said, I want this, and overridden things. Because Greer is a corporate yes man who doesn't understand violence. He's snaky. He lies. He never takes ownership, and he's weak. And that's the kind of stuff we've had here. So let's kind of take a look at the two main core tenets that Ross has developed here. I mean, there was the buy big free agencies. He even said, this is not like the corporate world where you could just throw money at it and get it fixed. That's what he tried with the free agency. And so he's learned that, hey, that don't work. Although we did it again with the trades and the big money afterwards. We took a hiatus for a year or two. But the things that are still remaining, and you could see in how Ross does things, is he believes, like a lot of people, you just get the right quarterback and you're going someplace. That's the most ludicrous, stupid thing ever, especially if you're a Dolphins fan. I had somebody say, I thought he was joking, like Dan Marino, he didn't win much. Like he was a bad quarterback. He's as good a quarterback you're ever going to get in this damn league. It wasn't his fault. The team wasn't built right. Shula couldn't draft too well. And if you got Dan Marino and you're not winning Super Bowls, at least one, it says that it's not all about the quarterback. Plenty of teams have the right structure. They've got the right team. And eventually they find the right quarterback. Look at Mayfield now at Tampa. Goff, who wasn't good enough with the Rams, he went over to the Lions. The Lions sent Stafford over to the Rams. They won a Super Bowl. Daniel Jones, he got booted out of the Giants, and they're screaming about Dart, but look how good he's doing over with the Colts. Donald. On and on it goes. Mac Jones. Everybody made fun of Mac Jones. I said, that guy's not bad. I think he could be pretty good. In the right framework. And he's winning with San Fran, who's beat up. Team. But he believes that if you just get the right quarterback, and I think it's because he grew up in a Dan Marino era, he wants that. And he thinks the fans want that. And he thinks that, like the ESPN tells you, that's how you win. It's not. And another core tenet is his corporate structure. He's had it. Remember Aponte fighting with Philbin and fighting with Ireland and on it goes. I've talked about it a dozen times. He believes in separations of power. That's not how it works in warfare. And that's what this is. You need one grand poobah, one chief. Obviously, that chief has got to go to the emperor and say on occasionally, hey, whatever. An emperor might say this. But ultimately, all football decisions have to rest on one smart and tough-ass individual who understands the core of the game, which is honor, violence, toughness, loyalty, commitment. And that one smart GM who is insular to upper management interfering makes a series of right choices, many of them to build the right team, and then you get consistency through applying violence, as I've talked about the offensive line, running the football inside, which sets consistency and a good defense, and then you start building out the skills, and then you find your quarterback. It can't be reverse engineered. It's not. Dan Marino is the perfect example among many other quarterbacks we're seeing now who suck someplace and are having great success other places. This is not to justify Tua, but if you're saying Tua's the reason for everything, we just had a better, if we had a better quarterback, we'd still be losing. Maybe we win a playoff game, but ultimately it would just hide the ineptness at the top, and it would have strung out the loss and the ridiculous failure for even longer. Should be celebrating Tua in a way because he can't carry it that far, and it forced to how long were we told that the offensive line, the design, Curtis, you just want your style teacup football, and that's just not the way we do it. Yeah, you're right, but that's not the right way to do it. There's a right way and a wrong way in football. Being a pussy, running outside, throwing all day, that's not fantasy, especially in this NFL cycle, which I've talked about longer than anybody. So these are the two cores. And this sets up the tank, the purposeful tank. And I said this about the purposeful tank many, many times, more on other shows. I had said it after the game, the loss last week. I want to put it here. Guys, there's a tank. They were planning the tank all along. Think about it. And so when you look at last year and you look at this year, people were telling you for the longest time there's no cap. I said in 22 and 23 is our peak years. 24 is going to start to break down. We might be able to hold it together a little bit. But certainly 24 and 25 is going to be no, you're an idiot. So if we see it and we know it, they know it. So why would they cut the purse strings, keep the expectations high, throw ridiculous assets to this team, and then be like shocked? Vapors. You had to be smoking dope. And or if you're just a fan, you're like, God, I'm so tired of this loss, this losing. I just got to believe. I understand that, but not if you're a pro. So they knew they were going to tank. Look at the moves they made. Look at all the moves. They were like, holy cow, that's kind of weird. So, but that tank is going to tie into stuff, the things I previously talked about, but on the good side of Ross and the concerning side as well. Ross is a loyal guy to certain people. He'll screw other people totally over. But if he likes you and he's chosen to be loyal to you, as a la Greer and even Gase, crazy Gase, he gave on like a 5-minute how grateful he was. There's certain people he is very loyal to, and that's a good quality. And that couldn't be the hope that I'm going to get to. So he'll screw certain people over, but he loves his family. He really does. He there's a lot of good to the guy. But he's grown up in a world that it's about stabbing certain people in the back. So he's handing this off to his son-in-law, who went, I'll take a look at his little sheet over here. Let's take a look at Daniel Silman. Daniel Silman is SEO and co-founder of Relevant, world's most influentially privately owned sports rights. He went to the University of Michigan, to the Stephen M. Ross School of Business. In a way, he's a little protege, sort of like Beal. He began his career founding Compass, managing a multifamily office of professional athletes. He's been in the entertainment side of things. He's part of a soccer organization that's had success. So he understands sort of the game of sports, and he's been involved in the exterior part, but he's not an athlete. He's not a guy who's got beat up too often. One concerning side is that Silman serves on the board of directors for media and technical company Transit, as well as Rise, a national nonprofit that educates and empowers sports communities to emulate racial discrimination, champion social justice, and improving race relations. There's nothing wrong with that. My kids don't look like me, and neither does my wife. But there's an element of wokeness to that is concerning. But ultimately, if you listen to this guy, and I'm going to play a clip on him, he's a smart young kid. And there is something about the one interview I could get that I loved and I identify with. And it offers huge amounts of promise. Now, the one thing he said, and I'll play the clip first. Here's his little clip.
Appreciate the vote of confidence, but I think, as I always have been my entire life, and this probably started in kindergarten, and I still am, the number one quality that I'd say that's led me to where I am is curiosity. And you talk about this all the time. I've listened to you in terms of not asking enough questions that are too big, too small, and always being willing to surround myself with mentors that may be experts or more experienced in specific spaces was something that I tried to do at the beginning. I felt like I had the right ideas. I had the right core values and filters for how I was going to build a business around Brandon Graham, for example. But I never thought that I could do it on my own. And I never thought that I had to be the smartest person in the room. And I tried to surround myself with experts or more experienced professionals where I can. And I'd say that as I've transitioned from financial services for professional athletes to selling a business to an investment role at RC Ventures to now running Relevant, I've never shied away from being willing to ask questions. And I'd say that that's probably the most important core value that I think that I've tried to instill within myself, but also within our entire company.
Curiosity. Knowing what you know and what you don't know, and getting experts around you to help educate you. And through the curiosity, finding the right solution to things. I'd like to say that's who I am. And this is a great, great sign. It's not 100%, but it's a great sign. This guy is very smart. And if you take his words at face value, this offers a lot of hope. But because he is in the Ross line and he looks up to Ross, will he believe that it's all about the quarterback and believe in separation of powers? Has Ross learned all this time that this is not a successful way? And will Sillman understand that, be forced to take it on or believe it and take it on? Or even if Ross still believes it, will he change? I think Ross is an honorable guy in a lot of ways. And I know he loves his family. And I think that the prep for this tank was to get the first half, that quarterback option. I personally think the next 2 years are going to be terrible seasons, and they'll have opportunities over the next 2 years. I think Ross is preparing to hand this thing over, and he's trying to get that one facet. Now, will Garfunkel and Greer, if he stays in here, still keep this corporatized structure with Sillman still using the separation of powers? If he does, he won't get the right GM and he won't get the right coach. And we'll know that right away based on what happens this offseason. If Greer moves to upper management, stays within the organization, it's not a good indicator. If he stays as GM, it's a terrible indicator. We're going to have to give it 2 years after the season and into next. Bad sign is Greer is still involved in evaluation. And if you want the quarterback, you probably more likely should get it next year because you don't want that guy I wouldn't want that guy picking up my lettuce, choosing my lettuce, because he's no good. And it's not just him. You know, Champ Kelly was involved. He was terrible in a lot of areas. Marvin Allen's been involved, the scouting staffs. And look at what we got from the draft this year, last year, and whatever. The only way this thing is going to work is if Sillman comes in, understands, hey, man, I'm telling the league, I'm changing what I do here, gets himself an erudite barbarian who's GM, who's on his own, he's not being interfered with, and begins to make the decisions. The good news is I do think Ross cares. I know he cares about his family, but is he wise enough? Here's a great quote, and I kind of wrap it up pretty quickly here. This is for everybody. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. And mastering yourself is true power. And that's where we're at. I do believe there is a hope. And the thing I'm never going to say, I've never said, and I've mocked people on, but I'm going to tell you now, I'm desperate. I love this team. I want to give you guys good news. I want to fair good news, but I am going to embrace hopium that this transition will be a good one. I can't promise you that, and I'm telling you outright, it's hopium in a sense. I hope the hopium can be validated into hope and ultimately becomes reality. But I've got to, guys. We need something. And there is potential, but there is clear peril. And so we've got to wait and see with this thing. But the heart of football is not what you think. A lot of fans, they thought Flores was a bad guy. That's what almost every coach has done since time immemorial. And you were told he was a monster. No, he was a failed character. He even admitted it. He's like, I didn't want that to be me. But how did he get there? And then you were sold McDaniel, the funny guy who, because you identified with it. You look at your job and say, would I want Flores in that job? I like McDaniel. But then you now see the fruits of that kind of nature. You definitely want a guy that is like Flores pre-insertion. Everybody liked him up until that point. And then he changed. He went warpath. You definitely want a guy lean to the tough with like a Vrabel. But you certainly don't want, it would be better to have a Flores type guy, and you can see it in the results. Ultimately, that will burn a team out if it's too much like that. But this is just, this kind of personality doesn't work. Neither does the corporate structure. Totally violent. You're going in there, your fingers are popped off, you're bleeding, you're bruised, you're hurt. And you got to go do it again in 2 days to get practice. You need warriors to lead you. You need men of character. And Ross and Garfunkel and all those guys can be those guys at the top. Let them do their thing. But get your erudite barbarian to be the GM outside the organization. So he's not bound by what is obviously failure. It's not just rotating out the quarterback or the offensive line or the head coach or the GM. If Champ Kelly comes in here, Marvin Allen, we might do a little better, but ultimately we're going to fail. You need a guy to come in and say, dude, you've been sucking for 30 years. Your drafting sucked for 20 plus years. There's something seriously wrong here, guys. Do you want to win? Let me come in, gut everything that's in football operations that I see fit without interference. That's what you need. Until you get that kind of leadership, I don't care about anything else. Will Jennifer and Kim and Daniel and Ross himself understand this? Can they master themselves, which is true power? Arthur! Can they have the wisdom and curiosities and honesty to say, hey, you know what? We got to relinquish some power here because it doesn't succeed. Because the kingdom, the Phindom, is suffering. We'll see. Hope you enjoyed. Curtis saying, be well. Go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.